everyone. Welcome to the JW Review. My name is Mike Felker, and this is the weekly podcast where we review Watchtower articles and compare them to what the scriptures teach. If you are new here joining us, welcome. I am really glad you're here. Whether you are a Jehovah's Witness in good standing and you don't know what you just stumbled upon, or if you are in that PMO status, if you're an ex-Jehovah's Witness, whatever walk of life you're on right now as it relates to this religion, I am just so glad you are here. If you want to know more about me, what I do, why I do all of this on this podcast, just go down to the description or the show notes. And you should find a link there that tells you a little bit more about me and how I do this or why I do this podcast. So just so you know, if you're wondering, I am not an ex-Jehovah's Witness. I am not a Jehovah's Witness. I've never had any formal association with this religion whatsoever. I'm a Christian, and basically I do this because so many people find these types of things to be helpful. So I'm not here to bash, I'm here to help. That will involve criticism, but who doesn't criticize? The Watchtower certainly criticizes others, so what's wrong with me offering a biblical criticism of their viewpoints as well? But hopefully we can all do this respectfully, and hopefully I am no exception to that. So we are looking at the last article in the December 2021 Watchtower Study Edition, and this is Study Article 51, titled Continue to Listen to Him. And this is basically a continuance from last week's article. I'd encourage you to check that out. So the key text for this is Matthew 17:5. This is the Mount of Transfiguration account. Really interesting text. If you want to read all of it, we're just going to read verse 5. While he was still speaking, that's Jesus, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and behold, a voice from the cloud said, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." Actually, while the he was still speaking, that's referring to Peter. Sorry. So while he was still speaking, that's referencing Peter. But the Father said, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him." And of course, we should all be listening to Jesus, and that is what this article is about. Let's check out paragraph number 3, and this says to read Matthew 7:13 and 14. This says, "Enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide, and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. For the gate is narrow, and the way is constricted that leads to life, and there are few who find it." Wow, there's so many interesting implications with this passage as it relates to Watchtower theology. Because I think I'll touch on this a little bit more as we read another paragraph. But think about this as it relates to the Watchtower's second class theology, or second chances theology, as I like to call it. And that's the theology to where you could just not believe any of this stuff. Not believe in any of this stuff. Which would be the vast majority of mankind, but they're all going to be resurrected anyway and given a second chance. So you get a second chance, you basically got 1,000 years to prove yourself. So if that's the case, what does this warning really mean in this life? How can this text that Jesus is saying here be meaningful in this life if you get resurrected and given a second chance, right? Now, if Jesus is saying that you don't get a second chance, well, this text is very meaningful and has some very serious implications, because this life is all you get. Now, if it was referring to the life to come, then what does it mean about there are few who find it? Are they saying that in the 1,000 years that only few out of the billions, potentially billions, that get resurrected, are only a few of those billions going to find it? Because the way the Jehovah's Witnesses paint the picture here is that during the 1,000 years, you're going to have this huge evangelism effort, this great teaching campaign, the greatest one that the world has ever seen. So are they saying that the vast majority of mankind who are resurrected are going to reject their message? I don't think that's the future that Jehovah's Witnesses are looking forward to, but that's the only way that you could view this text. Look at what it says in verse 14. The gate is narrow, and the way is constricted that leads to life, and there are few who find it. Few who find it. Now, if this is just referring to this life, in the Watchtower theology of the second chances thing is true, then what does it mean for there to be a way that leads to destruction? What would that mean? Because all of us are going to die, right? Whether you're a Jehovah's Witness or not, you're probably going to die. Of course, unless the Great Tribulation or Armageddon come and you survive that, but you're probably going to die. And if you've been reading these, if all Jehovah's Witnesses who've been reading these words for the past 100 years, they all died, right? Just like unbelievers die, Jehovah's Witnesses die. So what would it mean to say that the way is broad that leads to destruction if you're just going to be resurrected and given a second chance? That road didn't actually lead to destruction. Now, it would make sense to say the road leads to destruction if this life is the only chance you get, right? So think this through. Please think this through with Jesus' words in Matthew 7:13 and 14. Okay, so let's read paragraph 3. Notice that Jesus mentioned two different gates leading to two different roads, a spacious road and a cramped road. There is no third road. We must choose for ourselves on which road we will travel. This is the most important decision we will ever make. Our everlasting life depends on it. So in principle, I agree with what they're saying about especially about our everlasting life depends on it. But does it really depend on it in this life? Whether you choose think about it. You could choose the road in this life. You could choose the road that leads to destruction. You can go head on into that. Dive in head first. Go at it. Party time, right? You can do that. Remember the last month's broadcast, JW broadcast, where they said you could practice vile things. You could be a wicked, wicked, vile person. So, go party hard. Dive head first into that road that leads to destruction. Go for it. And then you can just get resurrected and have a second chance. That doesn't sound right with Jesus' words, does it? Paragraph 4. We need to keep in mind the difference between the two roads. The spacious road is popular because it is easy to travel. Sadly, many choose to remain on that road and to follow the crowd traveling on it. They fail to recognize that the one promoting this road is Satan the devil, and that his road leads to a dead end. So if you're thinking about the voice here, right, which voice are you following? The voice of Jesus or the voice of Satan the devil? Think about that contrast. Now, what the Watchtower wants to tell you is that the only way to follow the voice of Jesus is to listen to the Watchtower. Listen to the Watchtower. But is that really the same thing as listening to the voice of Jesus? Well, no, it's not. No, it's not. Because even the Watchtower admittedly gets it wrong. They misinterpret the words of Jesus, and they can do so for decades and decades and decades. So because of that, you should apply at least a healthy skepticism to the words of the Watchtower and test everything that they say against Scripture. If the Watchtower says something that's wrong, don't believe it. Listen to the voice of Jesus. So even if the words of man don't jive with the words of Jesus, reject the words of man. Even if you're the only one, even if it's not popular to do so. I mean, we just saw from the January broadcast that the Watchtower had been misinterpreting the words of Jesus for decades and decades and decades on John chapter 5, 28 and 29 with the resurrection of the righteous and the unrighteous. They had misinterpreted that for decades just by not understanding what a future tense verb is. So in light of that, you should have listened to the voice of Jesus and not the words of man. Paragraph 4. By some counts, there are thousands of religions, and most of them claim to teach the truth. Millions of people are so discouraged or blinded by this religious confusion that they do not even try to look for the road leading to life. But that road can be found. Jesus said, "If you remain in my word, you are really my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." So, in principle, I agree. But look at the picture that the Watchtower just often paints when they're talking about religions other than them. They like to broad brush it and talk about these millions of false religions or thousands of false religions, use these big numbers. And what they like to do is they like to create the confusion. They like to create more confusion than might actually be there. Because when you boil it down, okay, how many actual religions are there? Because when we look at Christianity, how many Christian religions are there? Now, it depends on what you mean by religion. Because what the Watchtower would have you believe is that the Baptists and the Presbyterians are like different religions, right? But are they really? Are they really? Or do they have a foundational set of core beliefs that they hold in common? Such as, what is the gospel? Is the Bible the Word of God? Did Jesus rise bodily from the dead? Is Jesus going to return again? Bodily, physically, is Jesus going to return again? Things like that. We can go on and on. Is salvation by faith alone, through grace alone, through Christ alone? Is Jesus the only way to salvation? I mean, on those things, the Baptists and the Presbyterians are pretty much going to be in agreement. I could name plenty more, but yet these thousands of religions that the Watchtower is talking about, they're probably referring to the denominations within Christendom without breaking them down. But what they'd like to do is just paint a broad brush and paint this picture of this vast array of confusion. So if you are a person who really is confused by that, please talk to me. But if you're going to narrow this down, like with the Eastern religions and all of those, the New Age religions, and then you have the monotheistic religions, right? Like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Those are really the only three main contenders on the stage. I mean, you can really just shoo away all the New Age religions and the Eastern religions because a bunch of them, they don't even really claim to be the truth, right? They don't even claim to be the truth. Well, there's a lot of thunder happening. I don't know if you heard that. Really loud thunder rumble. Hopefully my power stays on. I just saw it flicker here a second ago. So yeah, if you're confused by all these different religions out there by this, please talk to me. Please talk to me. I'd love to help you clear that up. Commendably, you did not follow the crowd. Rather, you searched for the truth. You began an intensive study of God's Word to learn what He requires of us, and you listened to Jesus' teaching. So keep that in mind. You listened to Jesus' teaching. Among other things, you learned that Jehovah expects us to reject the teachings of false religion and to stop celebrating holidays that have pagan origins or practices. Now, there's an interesting qualifier there. I don't know if everyone caught this. Stop celebrating holidays that have pagan origins or practices. Now, which holidays are those? Well, according to the Watchtower, really if you want to say the only holiday Jehovah's Witnesses celebrate, to my knowledge, is the annual memorial. That usually happens around Easter time, March or April, right? So that's one. You may not want to call that a holiday. I'm just thinking of a day of celebration. And then Jehovah's Witnesses, as far as I know, can still celebrate wedding anniversaries. So those are the only two. Now, all the other ones, like birthdays, Christmas, Easter, Halloween, there's other ones out there too. All of those are going to have pagan origins, right? But where did Jehovah ever say to don't celebrate certain holidays? Especially the ones I just referred to. Where did Jehovah, or especially Jesus, since we're listening to the teachings of Jesus, where did Jesus ever say, don't celebrate a particular holiday? Now, if something really, really does have pagan origins and it's just saturated in paganism, that's probably not a good thing. But does Christmas necessarily have pagan origins? Is there a way to celebrate Christmas without bringing in the pagan aspects of it, if there is such a thing? See, it's very black and white for the Jehovah's Witnesses, because they're not listening to the voice of Jesus here. Because Jesus didn't have anything to say about it, right? He didn't have anything to say about it. So what you really have to do is use your Christian conscience and Christian liberty. And just ask yourself, does it have any inherent pagan aspects to it? And if not, you're not doing anything necessarily wrong. Okay? I'm not telling you to celebrate a holiday or to not celebrate a holiday, but to say, listen to the voice of Jesus. And did Jesus say that it is wrong? Then they say, you also learn that doing what Jehovah requires and breaking free from practices that do not meet with his approval may be challenging. It may not have been easy for you to make the needed adjustments. Now, this is not really, when you boil this down, this is not really about practices that don't meet Jehovah's approval. What this really is listening to Watchtower policy and obeying them on whatever they put in print. Because whatever you're doing, whatever challenges or adjustments that you have to make, that's ultimately because of what Watchtower has put in print. And you know why I know that's the case? Because tomorrow the Watchtower could say that, oh, well, maybe it's okay to celebrate birthdays. Or maybe it's okay to celebrate certain aspects of Christmas. Or maybe it's okay around the time of Thanksgiving to gather with the family and have some turkey and just celebrate thankfulness. The Watchtower technically could do that tomorrow. Right? They could say it's okay. Or they could say it's no longer okay to celebrate your wedding anniversary because they found some kind of pagan connotations with the wedding anniversary. They could do that, and what you would have to do if you're a faithful Jehovah's Witness, you would have to adjust. Even if the Watchtower could not cite a single Bible verse to say that you can't celebrate wedding anniversaries, you would still not be able to do it, because you have to follow the teachings of men rather than the voice of Jesus. This is how it works if you're going to be a faithful Jehovah's Witness. Whatever they put in print, whether they have a Bible verse to support it or not, you've got to obey if you consider yourself to be a faithful Jehovah's Witness. And you can't question it. You can't question it. Paragraph 8. Let's start in the beginning of the paragraph. Consider what you learned from the experience of a young brother named Olaf. His classmates pressured him to engage in immoral conduct. When he explained that Jehovah's Witnesses live by the Bible's high moral standards, some girls in his class took this as a challenge and tried to persuade him to have sex with them. But Olaf stood firm in what is right. And this was not the only pressure he faced. Olaf says, "My teachers tried to convince me that I should pursue higher education because it is prestigious. They told me that without it, I could not succeed in life." Well, this is the regular standard method of how higher education is so often vilified by the Watchtower. Notice they don't ever forbid it explicitly. They're careful with their words, but they vilify it. They can never say, not that I've seen, anything positive whatsoever about higher education. And I can't think of a single spot where they said, hey, you know what? We don't necessarily approve or disapprove of higher education. We can tell you the pros and the cons, but it's up for you to decide. Where has the Watchtower ever done that? Where have they ever done that? And notice here, look at the picture. If you're listening to this on podcast, you can't see this, but it's a picture of a car driving down a very narrow mountain road that has a guardrail, to where if you go through the guardrail, you're going to fall off the mountain and probably die or get seriously injured. And that illustration is just showing about that narrow road leading to life. And notice the picture. You see a guy reading his Bible, okay, and that's on the narrow road. He's following Scripture, okay? And then you see another picture with a guy holding his phone saying, no, I'm not going to do that, probably referring to something blatantly immoral. And then another instance where a girl is shooing away a guy, probably pressuring her to do something that would be immoral. And then you have, okay, up next to two pictures clearly referring to some type of immoral event. Then you have a picture of someone looking at a university brochure. So in other words, they're saying here, so on the left you see the road leading to everlasting life, and on the right, off the cliff, you see the university brochure. In other words, saying, if you go to university, you could be on a road leading to destruction. And while that could be the case, it could also be the case that working at a grocery store could lead you onto a road of destruction. It could, depending on what you're giving into there, the peer pressure or whatever it might be. But the same thing can happen at a university. And we could even stack on top of that, going to public school, going to grade school. Going to grade school could lead you on a path leading to destruction, but nowhere are you going to find the Watchtower saying, don't go to grade school, right? As far as I know, this is the closest thing to an explicit declaration of do not go to university. We're telling you, don't go, you shouldn't go, rather than just issuing warnings. This is more than a warning, okay? This is more than a warning. But notice here what Olaf said. Now, there are people who say this. There are people who say that higher education, if you don't do it, you're not going to succeed in life. Of course, there's people that say that. But this is not about whether you need higher education or don't need higher education, right? You might need it, you might not, all right? It just depends on what you want to do. If you want to become a doctor, if you want to become a lawyer, if you want to go into perhaps the engineering field, in some engineering fields, you're going to have an education. If that's what you want to do, you're going to have an education at a university to do those things. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Now, if you want to go become a programmer, go into sales or something like that, you don't necessarily need to go to university. You could go to a quick trade school, do a little bit online education. So I'm not the one saying that you need to go education, but notice here, they always put higher education in the worst possible light, like they're doing this. Saying that, oh, without it, you will not succeed in life, somebody said. But what about a more balanced view, right? What about a more balanced view? They don't ever give you that. Yet we're supposed to listen to them. And I thought this was all about listening to the voice of Jesus. Yet we hear higher education being vilified, something that Jesus did not do. We can even look at the Bible characters. The Apostle Paul, a very educated man. I bet he was thankful for his education, wasn't he? He never vilified getting higher education. He was even educated in the ways of the Romans, in their laws, in their customs, and even their literature. Paul was educated in these ways, and he used that to his advantage. Paragraph 9. Satan would like to cause you to exit the road that leads to life. He wants you to join the majority of mankind on the spacious road leading off into destruction. Now again, you could dive in head first to that. Dive in head first, have a ball. For today we can party and tomorrow we die. Paul said something like that. So yeah, go head first in that, because you can get resurrected and have a second chance. That's Watchtower theology. Now, the Watchtower's not saying to go party it up for, tomorrow you die. They're not saying that. And I get that. I know they're not saying that. The Watchtower wants you to follow their religion and their ways, right? But I'm talking about the implications of the theology that you could go off into that road leading to destruction, realizing that you're going to get resurrected and have another chance. It just cheapens the words of Jesus. So again, we're supposed to listen to Jesus. If you listen to Jesus, don't buy into a theology like the Watchtowers that cheapens the serious words of Jesus. That this road is the only chance that you've got, this life. Choose one road or the other. One road leads to life, another one leads to destruction, and you do not get a second chance at that. Paragraph 19. We are grateful that Jehovah provides us with loving direction through the head of the congregation, Jesus Christ. May we be determined to listen to him, as were the apostles Peter, James, and John. Well, that's great. I agree with it. But you can't truly believe that. You can't truly believe that if you're allowing the words of man to guide your life. And you're listening to the words of man to try to filter the words of Jesus. In other words, you can't go listen directly to the words of Jesus without first finding out what these words of man tell you that Jesus' words mean. That is, if you're going to be a faithful Jehovah's Witness. So hopefully this gave you something to think about. If you have any thoughts on any of this, whether you agree, disagree, or just have anything to add, I would love to hear from you. If you're watching this on YouTube or seeing this on my website, please leave me a comment. I love hearing everyone's thoughts. Just know that I'm not the only one reading and responding to your comments. You are actually helping others who certainly read the comments and are encouraged by them. So if you are one who leaves comments, please keep doing that. It not only encourages me, it encourages everyone else too. If you'd like to contact me directly or privately, there's a number of ways for you to do that. If you go down to the show notes or video description, there's a couple of ways to do that, whether it's through my website. We can talk via WhatsApp. We can talk on the phone, Skype, whatever it is. I'm happy to speak with you privately if you'd like to talk with me. Beyond that, if you feel led to support this work, the best way for you to do that is to share this content with others who need to hear it. And not only my channel, but any of the other Christian channels who are doing this sort of thing. It's so important that you share this type of content because you all know there is secular content out there. And in light of that, it's just so important to have the gospel proclaimed in light of all that secular content. Because what good is it to leave the Watchtower if you just go straight into secularism or atheism, right? What we need is to proclaim the gospel and promote content that does that. Okay, so important. That's the best way for you to support this work. Also, hitting the like button, the subscribe button if you're on YouTube, if you're on Apple Podcasts, leaving me a 5-star review. That really does help the algorithms. Beyond that, if you want to support this financially, you can do that through Patreon. Go down to the show notes or description. There's a link there to become a monthly supporter. That just helps to keep the lights on, to keep up with all the technology, improving it and whatnot. So thank you all who support this in every way, whether financially or not. I really appreciate everyone's support. It means so much to me. And I just love doing this, and I just love hearing how this benefits you. So that wraps up this month's Watchtower. I haven't even looked at the next issue. Hopefully it has something interesting to sink our teeth into. And I'm currently watching the February JW broadcast, but I haven't gotten through it all. So if there's something interesting in there, hopefully I will be doing a review of that. So with that said, we'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great week, and we will see you next week. For more information about Jehovah's Witnesses and other topics, please visit michaeljfelker.com. There you can also reach me directly to submit questions or comments to be covered on the JW Review. To subscribe to this podcast, please go to iTunes and search for the JW Review.